Good afternoon, everybody. Pigskin Pete here. Happy Tuesday to everybody. I feel like I just got off here because I almost kind of did. Thanks, everybody, for stopping in. Check out the college football rankings show. Comes on at 7 p.m. What time is it? About 10 minutes till we get there. For anybody who missed my stream earlier, I went through a lot of the Vegas picks against the spread for a lot of these rivalry games this week. If I missed your team as far as the rivalry goes, I apologize, but I did a bunch of teams. Real quickly, well, let me see who's in the chat here real quick before I get into the ranking discussion. I didn't go over any of the rankings earlier because I wanted to save it for tonight. But I do think there is a good chance there might be a couple of teams that get jumped tonight, and I'll go over that in a second. Good afternoon. Clemson football says hello, Pete. Hello, sir. Dondre Crawford, how you doing, sir? Glow. Richard Neal, good afternoon to you. Welcome to the stream. I'm sure if you're here, you're amazing and fantastic. Otherwise, you would not be here. Clemson Jacob says, hello, my mobile homeboys. Arthur Walker, how you doing, sir? Yeah, so, by the way, everybody, and before I forget, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. I won't be doing a stream on Thursday like I normally do because Thursday is Thanksgiving. I'll let you know, keep an eye out on YouTube or Twitter, whether or not I'll be doing a live stream for the Oklahoma and West Virginia game on Friday. I cannot confirm or deny whether or not that will be happening. It's going to depend on what's going on with the Peete family. I see some people in here saying happy Thanksgiving to me and my family. The same goes for every single one of you. And my favorite time of the year. Not only the holidays, but football is getting to the point where it's the best time of the year for football. The weather's cooling down. If you live in the South like me, it sucks. The heat sucks. I hate the summertime. I mean, all around the best time of the year. And yes, I will be streaming Ohio State versus Michigan Saturday afternoon. That game is at 12 p.m. Eastern. So I'll be starting that stream right 15 or 20 minutes, 15 or 20 minutes before the game starts. Can I stream Clemson versus South Carolina? I don't know. Doing a 3 or 4 hour stream is not easy, especially when I'm by myself. So probably not. One 3 or 4 hour stream in a day is enough for me. It takes a lot of energy out of you. We'll see how I feel. If I'm feeling frisky, maybe. Yeah. So anyway, before this thing comes on, let's go over quickly the rankings of last week, and I'll tell you not where I think they're going to rank them this week, but where I think that they should be this week. I'm going to give you my opinion on it, not what I think the committee's going to do, because trying to get in the mind of the committee is virtually impossible because they contradict themselves at every single turn. Last week, Alabama 1, Clemson 2, Notre Dame 3, Michigan 4, Georgia 5, Oklahoma 6, LSU 7, Washington State 8, West Virginia 9, and Ohio State 10. Ohio State's been sticking at that 10 spot for a few weeks now. And anyway, hold on. I'll get into that in a second. So where I think they should be this week, I went through this. So I've been saying I don't think that LSU belongs in the top 10. But looking at a lot of the 2 and 3 loss teams that were ranked way lower, between 10 and say 25, I still think LSU is probably, resume-wise and eye test-wise and the whole thing, probably the best 2-loss team still, based on who they've beaten. So I do have LSU at 10, under protest, but I can't think, if you look at the other 2-loss teams and 3-loss teams, one that deserves to be ahead of LSU at this point at 10. So I'm going to have LSU at 10. Now, I don't think that LSU is going to fall at 10. So 2 weeks ago, they had LSU at 7, which they did not belong there. And then I thought for sure last week they were going to fall. after a struggle win against Arkansas, and they stayed at 7. So that tells me the committee thinks that they still value their wins and their schedule. And I don't think LSU probably will fall to 10, but I have LSU at 10 on my poll. Number 9, I have UCF. Now, I've had UCF outside of the top 10 every week. But again, if you look at the other teams, now you can make a case for UCF to be anywhere between 6, depending on who you are and how you feel about that team, and 20. The fact of the matter is they're still unbeaten. They had a convincing win over the second best team in the group of 5, arguably, in Cincinnati last week. I mean, they didn't just beat them, they beat the bejesus out of them. So I'm going to put them at number 9. Now, do I think that UCF deserves some sort of shot at a playoff? Do I think that UCF could beat anybody in this top 10? Probably not. Not in my mind. There's a couple of teams in here they probably would give a good game to. I don't see them beating any of these teams. But anyway, I have UCF at number 9. Number 8, I have Ohio State. For all of the problems that Ohio State has had this year, starting before the season with Urban Meyer, all of their close struggle wins against marginal to bad teams, their embarrassing blowout loss to Purdue. The fact is, Ohio State is a one-loss Big Ten team. And they are playing Michigan this week for a spot in the Big Ten championship against Northwestern. And if they win that game and then they go and beat Northwestern in the Big Ten championship, they're going to get in the playoff. Unless some other crazy stuff happens. But I think that a one-loss Big Ten champ, whether that's Michigan or Ohio State, more than likely will get in the playoff. Well, we know Michigan will because they're already in the top 4. But Ohio State would, I think, if they won out, would get in the playoff. The only way I could see them not is if somehow Georgia beat Alabama. They might make a case for Alabama to get in as a one-loss team over Ohio State based on their eye test and their resume. But nonetheless, Ohio State's a one-loss team. They control their own destiny. So I have Ohio State at number 8. Here's where it gets controversial, and I'm going to probably piss a few people off. What's up, Prince 6'1"? How you doing, sir? The GOAT Watson, Tiger Nation. Thank you all for joining me, my boys. Here's where it gets controversial because I know I have a lot of Oklahoma fans on here. I have Oklahoma at 7. Oklahoma's been at 6 in the poll. Oklahoma's been at 6 in the playoff poll. Oklahoma's been at 6 in my poll for weeks. I put Washington State at 6 ahead of Oklahoma. Barely. And the only reason is I've sort of woken up to the fact that Washington State is actually a really good team. Now, if Washington State played Oklahoma, do I think that Oklahoma would beat Washington State? I think they probably would. But I'm not convinced of it. I mean, I don't know. I think it would be a good game. Washington State's better than I thought they were. If you're splitting hairs between Oklahoma, a one-loss Oklahoma, and a one-loss Washington State, Oklahoma for the past couple weeks has been getting by the skin of their teeth, and Washington State has been beating the crap out of who they've played. And I think Washington State actually has a pretty good defense, which is something Oklahoma doesn't have. So this doesn't matter. So if you're an Oklahoma fan, you're getting mad at me, saying how in the hell could you put Washington State ahead of Oklahoma? It doesn't matter. I mean, like I said, you're splitting hairs. And if Oklahoma wins out, there's a good chance they'll be considered for the playoff regardless of what happens with Washington State. So after that, so I have Washington State jumping Oklahoma 1 spot. Then I have Georgia at 5, Michigan at 4, Notre Dame at 3, Clemson at 2, Alabama at 1. So that's the biggest change I've in the poll is Ohio State moving up in my poll a couple of spots, UCF moving up a couple of spots, and, of course, Washington State moving up one spot, jumping over Oklahoma. Yeah, I don't know. I agree that I think that as far as the actual committee goes, the top 6 will probably stay the same. But this isn't the committee's poll. This is my poll. Washington State. Hold on, let me see who said that. Washington State killed Arizona. 7 touchdown passes by the quarterback. Yeah. Oklahoma struggled versus Kansas. I can see that. That's my point. And if you go, so they claim, and I don't know how true this is because they don't really have any consistency on that entire committee, but they claim that they look at every season as every week as a season in itself. And they look at the entire body of work as if that week was the only week of the season. And like you just said, if you look at, they were only a couple of spots apart last week. West Virginia got knocked out of that conversation because they lost, right? That was the one that was between them in the rankings. And if you look at Washington State's convincing win over Arizona, even though Arizona's not good, but they blew them out. I mean, dominated them. And then you look at Oklahoma giving up like 500 yards of offense to Kansas, who's one of the worst teams in America. Then I think you can justify making that switch for this week. Now, that could change next week. Oklahoma could beat the hell out of West Virginia. Washington State could lose to Washington. Washington State could fall out. But as of right now, today, November 20th, 2018, I'm putting a very, very slight edge for Washington State over Oklahoma in the rankings. Fine, Pete. We'll just go cruise down those country roads to victory land. Well, there you go. That's what you got to do, sir. Believe me. Pigskin Pete's opinion is basically worth the paper that it's written on. And so all Oklahoma's got to do is take care of business. Yeah, Washington State is good. I haven't given them enough credit, and I don't think a lot of America has, because of who they play. But I can't sit on my high horse and say it's not Clemson's fault that they haven't played anybody that's good. It's not Alabama's fault that they haven't played anybody good. Well, I mean, you can make the same argument for Washington State, right? I mean, it's not their fault they haven't played anybody good. The only thing that's really a blemish on Washington State's schedule is the fact that they lost to a bad Southern Cal team. But, I mean, you could look at a lot of these teams and say the same thing. Ohio State lost to an average Purdue team. LSU's got 2 losses. Oklahoma lost to Texas, who they're much better than. Georgia got blown out by LSU, who clearly I think that they're better than. So a lot of these teams have, don't throw stones if you live in a glass house type of situation. I mean, Alabama, Clemson, and Notre Dame and Michigan are really the ones that can claim that they don't have any losses, or they have a really, really good loss. And I consider Michigan's loss to Notre Dame to be a very good loss at this point. UGA is 5. Yes, I have Georgia at 5. I think they'll stay there. I don't think that, as far as the committee's concerned, I've heard a lot of people saying Notre Dame might jump Clemson because of their convincing win over Syracuse. Listen, they're not. I'd be shocked if Notre Dame jumped over Clemson. And by the way, if that did happen, I wouldn't care. But Clemson had a convincing win against Duke. So, I mean, I don't see them getting jumped. I've also heard people saying Clemson should be 1 ahead of Alabama because Alabama struggled for 1/2 against the Citadel. Nah. You're talking about 3 undefeated teams that took care of business convincingly, the end score. Then I don't see any movement in the top 3 at all. I'd be shocked if there was. And again, I don't care. If Notre Dame jumped Clemson to 2 and Clemson went to 3, still doesn't matter because they still would play each other if the season ended today. And also, there's a good chance that even if Notre Dame goes 12-0, which I think they will, we all think they will, the fact that they don't have a conference championship game, they might fall 1 spot just for that reason, by no fault of their own, for the final ranking. So, no, then they would swap back. Or if Notre Dame finishes 3 at the end of the regular season and Michigan goes on to beat Ohio State, and then beat Northwestern and win the big championship, Michigan might hop Notre Dame the final week, just because Notre Dame doesn't have that 13th data point, is what they call it. They might punish Notre Dame for that reason and that reason only, but it doesn't matter, because if you're Notre Dame, if you're undefeated, you're getting in, whether it's at 4, 3, or 2, you're getting in. Yeah, I see the rankings here are coming on. Keeping one eye on the computer screen and one eye on the TV here. Alabama will lose Saturday against Auburn. No, I doubt that. What's up, Zerges2000? Not sure why you popped up on my browser. Suspect I caught something watching Bobby Durkins. Nonetheless, enjoy your thoughts. Well, thank you, sir. You probably popped up on your browser because a lot of the people that subscribe to Bobby Durkins subscribe to me and vice versa, and that's how YouTube does things. They'll recommend me if you're subscribed to him and vice versa. But your guess is as good as mine. Trying to get into the mind of the YouTube algorithm. I mean, you basically have to be a Georgia Tech student on crack. NASA CGI Snakes. Good afternoon to you, sir. Yeah, 28 people in here and only 6 likes. Well, what's going on with that? Hit the like button, folks. What are you doing? Arthur says that Georgia should be number 4. No, I don't think so. And if you're trying to make an argument that you think that Georgia's better than Michigan, I mean, that's fine if you want to say that, but they haven't played each other, so we don't know that. And the fact is that Michigan has a better loss than Georgia does. Michigan's only loss is to an undefeated Notre Dame, and Georgia's only loss was a blowout loss to a 2-loss LSU. So that's the difference between them. Do I think Army will be ranked? Yeah, I think they will. I think they'll be ranked somewhere around 24 or 25 probably. Clemson Jacob says their defense wasn't elite, but better than Oklahoma's. I'd say Ohio State right now. I don't know what you're saying. Do you think Stanford should be ranked? No, I don't. Well, by the way, good afternoon, Cole. I'm not going to attempt to destroy your last name there. I don't think Stanford should be ranked. Well, I take that back. Do I think that Stanford is worthy of being a top, the 24th or 25th team in the country? Sure. But that doesn't matter. Hold on, here we go. So number 25, Iowa State. 24, Pitt. 23, Boise State. 22, Texas A&M. And 21, Utah State. So Pitt moves into the top 25 for the first time. But I actually expected that. Pitt's 7-4 and has won their division. And these past, I'd say 4 or 5 weeks, they have been dominating. Pitt's a little bit of a confusing team. Early in the season, they were awful. I mean, they lost badly to UCF. They got blown out by Penn State. They did take Notre Dame all the way down to the wire. And since that Notre Dame game, they have been destroying people and running for 400 yards per game. So I'm not surprised to see Pittsburgh at 7-4 at number 24 there. Number 20, Syracuse. Syracuse drops from 12 to 20 after that blowout loss to Notre Dame. 19, Northwestern, who's the Big Ten West champion and will be playing for the Big Ten championship against either Michigan or Ohio State. 18, Mississippi State. 17, Utah. And 16, Washington. And that's going to be a huge game for a lot of reasons between the Apple Cup, the Washington State this week. And what was the line on that? I actually picked Washington to cover the spread, despite the fact that I'm very impressed with Washington State. Washington State's favored in that game. But I think that Washington, even though they're a 3-loss team, top to bottom has more talent than Washington State. And they have owned Washington State in that rivalry in recent years. So, anyway, Washington State's at number 16. I think that's fair. Yeah, Fresno State lost. Oh, what's up, Will Luna? Hello, big boy. Good afternoon. Welcome to the stream. I'm sure if you're here, you're amazing and fantastic. Otherwise, you would not be here. Wolverines beat Buckeyes. Urban Meyer's Spider-Man cyst will explode. Yeah, I agree that Army probably should be ranked, but I mean, come on. All right, so here we go. Top 15 through 11 through 15. So 15 is Kentucky at 8-3. They're overranked. I'm sorry, they're overranked. 14 Texas, 13 West Virginia. So West Virginia fell all the way from I don't know. See, this is where it starts. This is where the committee starts getting weird because, I mean, if you look at, I mean, not that it matters, but I still think West Virginia is better than Florida. You can make a case that Texas and Penn State are both better than Florida, but I mean, you're splitting hairs at that point. But Florida getting a lot of love, which just tells me already that LSU, where I have them falling down to 10 from 7, they won't be. They'll probably only fall down one spot if they fall at all, because the committee for some reason loves LSU. Do I think that Clemson deserves to be number 1? I don't know. I mean, deserves. I'm fine with Alabama at 1. So number 10, Ohio State. They did not move, shockingly enough. Now I realize they had a struggle win against Maryland, but the fact that West Virginia lost, I would have thought that Ohio State would have moved up a little bit, and that means that UCF's going to be ranked higher than Ohio State, which I had. In my poll, I had LSU 10, UCF 9, Ohio State 8. I think we're going to see, most likely we're going to see UCF here at 9. We'll see if I'm right. If UCF moves up higher than 9, I'd be shocked. There you go, 9 UCF. So that means that they have LSU still ranked ahead of Ohio State, which I can't believe. Who thinks 8 is going to be? 8 better be LSU and not Washington State. If LSU's ranked ahead of Washington State still, I don't know. I mean, that's crazy. They love to drag this crap out, don't they? I can't believe that LSU is still in the top 8. No spoilers. You can't spoil it, man. We're all watching that live here. Oh, my God. Washington State at 8. That means that they still have LSU at 7, ahead of Washington State. That's unbelievable. I mean, if you're a Washington State fan, I've never met one. I'm sure there are plenty of them out there. They're just not on the Pixie and Pete YouTube channel. Well, I've never met any. I mean, you can't get any further away from where I live than Washington State. But, I mean, talk about no respect. No respect. I mean, all they're doing is just killing everybody they play. And they're a one-loss team. And they still ranked LSU ahead of them. That's unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, you know what this tells me? I mean, I guess if you look 2 weeks back, you could say, okay, I guess maybe at the time LSU could justify being at 7 or 8. But week after week, they just continue to stay at 7. Washington State just continues to win and dominate. what this tells me is that the committee, Washington State, no matter what happens, I mean, there could be all kinds of losses in this top 6. Washington State's not getting in the playoff. They have basically said in so many words that the Pac-12 is so underwhelming and terrible that they don't deserve to be in the playoff no matter what. I mean, aside from a completely undefeated team, a 13-0 team, the Pac-12 is not getting in the playoffs. So they've just told us, Washington State, you're screwed. You might make a New Year's Six bowl game and play UCF or somebody, but you're not getting in the playoff. Doesn't matter who loses. I mean, Clemson, Alabama, Notre Dame, Michigan could all lose this week. Washington State's still not getting in. Sorry. I expect the top 6 to stay the same based on what we've just seen there. So, yeah, Alabama 1. No shocker there. Clemson will be 2. There you go, Clemson 2. So Notre Dame will remain 3. There you go. Michigan will remain 4. I think. Yes, please. Yeah. And then, of course, 5 and 6 will be Georgia and Oklahoma. Yeah, so there you go. So there's just we're not seeing a lot of movement in these compared to the past few years with the playoff committee. They were more willing in the past to move teams and swap teams based on what they had done the previous week and who they played against. You're not seeing that now. This committee is obviously, I mean, every committee every year is different, and it's very clear that they are not moving teams that win, number one. Doesn't matter who you win against or how much you win by. They don't move you if you win. The reason we're seeing LSU staying where they're staying, the reason we're seeing this top 6 stay where they're staying. It's very odd, to say the least. Washington State has to win the Pac-12. They could play Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. Yeah, so you're assuming that Georgia loses to Alabama, right? And Washington State wins out and wins the Pac-12. Yeah, that's very likely that would happen. I'd be interested to see who UCF will play in a New Year's Six bowl game. I'm assuming UCF's going to win this week and then win the American Athletic Conference championship and go 13-0 again. And provided that we don't have any several losses here in the top 4 over the next couple of weeks, then UCF will not make the playoff, as they shouldn't. And I'd be interested to see who they would play in a New Year's Six bowl game. I'm hearing a lot of people say maybe Oklahoma, if Oklahoma gets left out, provided Clemson wins out, Bama wins out, Notre Dame wins out, Michigan wins out, those would be your top 4, right? So that would leave out Oklahoma. And a lot of people are saying Oklahoma and UCF would probably end up playing in a bowl game, or LSU. But I think Oklahoma probably would be more likely. What's up, Eric Linder? LSU has no reason to be ranked so high. Sure, they beat Georgia and Alabama, killed them. Yeah, well, yeah. You're not going to get any pushback from me, sir. I agree that LSU is ranked way too high. The fact that West Virginia caught another loss, if you look at all the 2 and 3 loss teams, I do think that LSU should be somewhere around 10 or 11, maybe 12. But 7 is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. They have no business being at 7. Yeah, I actually agree with that. Now, you haven't heard anybody, not trash UCF, but I'm not on the bandwagon of UCF being an elite team. But wins and losses still have to matter. I don't care what your schedule is. And the fact that UCF is undefeated and one of the only 4 undefeated teams in the country, I'd say that they do have a good case to be ranked ahead of LSU. I do. The committee hates Ohio State since they don't own their own stadium. I don't think the committee hates Ohio State at all. As a matter of fact, Ohio State still can, even sitting at 10 doesn't matter. They could be at 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Doesn't matter. If Ohio State beats Michigan this week and then beats Northwestern in the Big Ten Championship, I believe that Ohio State will get in the playoff. Now, there will be an argument for that fourth spot if that happens, should Oklahoma, a lot of struggle wins too, and they've got no defense. I mean, Ohio State's defense isn't good, but compared to Oklahoma's, it's great. I mean, everybody's is. So, yeah, I mean, I think that Ohio State would get in. I think a one-loss Big Ten champ, whether that's Michigan or Ohio State, will get it into the playoff. So it doesn't matter. If you're an Ohio State fan, don't jump off a bridge yet. I mean, don't jump off a bridge until you get your brains bashed in this weekend by Michigan. But until then, you're still fine. Georgia needs Ohio State to win this weekend. I disagree. Georgia doesn't need anything but Georgia to win out. Listen, if Georgia controls their own destiny just as much as Ohio State does, just as much as Clemson, just as much as Alabama, just as much as Oklahoma, Michigan, I mean, a one-loss SEC champ, which is if Georgia wins out, they will be a one-loss SEC champ, is getting in the playoff. Period. End of story. So, yeah, so Georgia doesn't need anything. Georgia needs to beat Georgia Tech, and Georgia needs to beat Alabama in the SEC championship game, and they're in. No questions asked. After the Q's game, do you think Notre Dame closed the gap between Alabama, Clemson, and Notre Dame? I don't think so. I think that Notre Dame is solid where they are. Now, listen, you can make an argument. First of all, I don't think they closed the gap with Alabama. Period. I think that in the committee's mind and most people's mind is that Alabama is at 1 no matter what happens until they lose. And then the question is between 2, 3, and 4. Right? Well, you can take 4 out of it because Michigan has 1 loss. But between Clemson and Notre Dame, if you want to argue, or anybody else wants to argue, that Notre Dame belongs at 2 based on who they've beaten and the way that they've beaten them, fine. I'm not going to argue with you. Now, if you put Clemson and Notre Dame on a field to play against each other on a neutral field, I'm picking Clemson to win that game. I mean, not as a Clemson fan, as objective college football fan, I think that Clemson will beat Notre Dame. But if you just want to talk about what's happened so far, sure, you could put Notre Dame at 2. I wouldn't. I mean, it's not going to hurt my feelings. I still think that Notre Dame's going to lose in the first round of the playoff. I'm sorry. I think that Michigan would beat them if they played each other right now on a neutral field. And you could say, well, how can you say that? They already beat Michigan. Yeah, in week 1 they beat Michigan, and right now Michigan looks like a better team than Notre Dame does to me. First of all, I think it'd be a good game between Michigan and Notre Dame. I think that would be one of the best games of the year if they played each other in a playoff situation. But I'd pick Michigan to beat them. If they played Clemson, I'd pick Clemson to beat them, and if they played Alabama, I'd pick Alabama to beat them. And of course, I could be wrong, but just the way I feel. Billy's a Alabama fan, says you could put Alabama at number 2 and he would be happy. Iron Fist, good afternoon, says get 'em Pokes. We actually have you're an Oklahoma State fan? Welcome, sir. I don't know if I've had an Oklahoma State fan on here before. So if you are one, I'm assuming you say so. You're saying get 'em Pokes. Yeah, hit the like and subscribe button, sir. I always like different fan bases to get on here. The more, the merrier. You'd be happy to know, Iron Fist. I went on a rant the other day. I think that Oklahoma State, despite their record, I think they're much better than their record. What are they, 6-5? They were 5-5 last week, right? And then they beat West Virginia. I think they're much better than their record. They've had a ton of close losses. They played some really good teams very close. Sometimes your record does not reflect how good of a team you are, and I think that Oklahoma State fits in that category. Oklahoma could very easily be a 2-loss team instead of a 5-loss team, based on what I've seen this year. I think they're really good. He hasn't shown up since he spent all last week crying after Bedlam. Well, I'll tell you what, even if you're an Oklahoma fan, listen, you almost lost that game, right? I mean, didn't Oklahoma State miss like an extra point? That game could have easily went to overtime, and who knows what would have happened in overtime. Jacob Zubler. Hold on, I'll get you in a second, Jacob. I want to answer this other question. Eric Lindor asks, I absolutely agree. My Irish probably will be out in the first round. They definitely gave more confidence after holding Syracuse at 3 points, though. And we're going to dump. Yeah, first of all, I agree that you are one of the best 4 teams in the country. So I'll give Notre Dame every bit of credit. First of all, going under, just don't know. I mean, I could be wrong. I thought that Syracuse had a pretty good chance to beat Notre Dame, and clearly I was wrong about that. So who knows if Notre Dame gets in the playoffs? So what could happen? Anything can happen in a one-game situation. Will Notre Dame beat USC? Yes. What do I think about teams like Alabama playing FCS teams? I don't think anything about it because, I mean, listen, most teams do, or most Power 5 teams do. Clemson plays FCS. They play one FCS team a year. It's not the question of what do I think about them playing FCS teams. It's what do I think about them playing FCS teams in November. What I would like to see happen is a rule made throughout the NCAA that it's okay to schedule an FCS team if you're a Power 5 program, no matter who you are. But that game has to be played in September, in the first 4 weeks of football. That way, you still get they say that these FCS teams, they need the revenue, right? They get paid $1 million, some of them, to play teams like Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, whoever. And that supports their entire athletic program. I'm completely okay with that. If that's going to help all these other schools have an athletic program and give scholarships to kids who can't, who aren't good enough to go play it in Alabama or Clemson or Georgia or in Oklahoma or whatever, I'm okay with that. But the game does not need to be played in November. In my opinion, the college football season should get more intense as it goes on. So you should have the cupcake games the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. Then you should start getting into a little bit of non-conference play after that. And then, of course, all of your conference games should be October throughout November, and then so on. And then, of course, you have the conference championships and the rivalry games that we have this week, and then the bowl games. There's no reason that any team should be playing cupcakes in November. And listen, Clemson did it last year and has done it before. Clemson last year, I think, played I don't remember who it was, but it was either a Group of 5 team or an FCS team or whatever. In November, the week before we played South Carolina. I don't like it. What's up, buddy? Pete Jr. Yeah. From if you're a player or a coach, you love it. You get to rest your players. Coming up on the toughest part of the season, the most important part of the season. But as a fan of college football, to sit around last week and there's 12 games on TV that don't matter and nobody wants to watch, it's not good. It's not good for football. You got it. There you go. Sorry. What was I doing? Should Clemson be worried about the ACC championship game? I'm not worried about it in the least bit, but listen, it's championship game. It's a one-day game. I mean, anybody team to lose. I'm not worried about it in the least bit. I think that the Coastal Division in the ACC is just completely underwhelming. And despite the fact that Pitt is the best team in that division, doesn't mean that I don't think that they can hang with Clemson. Yeah, so I'm not worried about it. No. Kids are going crazy over here, aren't they? If Georgia beats Alabama, what does that mean for LSU since LSU beat Georgia? DJ Bucci. I don't know what that means. I don't think that if I'm trying not to be insensitive when I say this, and I don't mean to be. But LSU season was over when they lost to Alabama because they already had a loss to Florida. So what does it mean for LSU? If Alabama or if Georgia beats Alabama, it doesn't mean anything. What it means is that Georgia is probably going to go to the playoff. And it's the more interesting question will be, what does it mean for Alabama? Because would Alabama be left out of the playoffs, or would Alabama find a way to still get in the playoffs, even losing the SEC championship game? And I think the answer to that is that Alabama will get left out of the playoff. Unless Michigan, or let's put it this way, unless Northwestern wins the Big Ten, no matter who that's against. That'd be the only way I think Alabama would get in the playoff with one loss. But if Michigan or Ohio State wins out, I think they get in. Looking at you guys' schedule, how come you guys can't play Notre Dame since you're in the same conference? Well, here's the thing, sir. So we do play Notre Dame twice. We played them in 2015, which I went to that game. We played them in 2020 and 2021. So Notre Dame is not in the ACC. Number one, they're not in football. They're not technically in a conference. They play 5 ACC teams a year, which is an 80% of a or whatever 70% of a ACC schedule. They play. So let's do the math here. It's not even a real. It's not like, you know. So with the divisions in the ACC and the SEC and the Big Ten, you have your cross-divisional game you play every year. For Clemson, it's Georgia Tech. We play them every year, even though they're not in our division, but they're in the ACC. And then we rotate the rest of them. So we play each of the rest of them every 6 years or so, on average. But Notre Dame does not do it like that. So Notre Dame, they screw everything up in the ACC because since they're not in a conference and they play ACC schools, Big Ten schools, Pac-12 schools, Big 12. They play everybody in the country. They play all these different conferences every year. So their schedule doesn't work out to where they can have a rotating schedule on a consistent basis. They schedule everything out based on whatever. It's got to match up with the rest of their schedule because all these other conferences have to have their schedule work as well. So, but we do play Notre Dame, like I said, twice in the next 4 years. Then we play them again 2 or 3 times in a row, like 5 years after that. Put it this way. If you go on and look at Clemson's schedule from now till 2039, we play them like 7 times. They're already on the schedule. But we don't get to pick. We can't just go to Notre Dame and say, hey, Notre Dame, we want to play you every 2 years or every 3 years. It doesn't work like that. Notre Dame's they've got all the power in this, which pisses me off. One of the reasons I don't like Notre Dame is because they have no business having any power. They get the benefit of playing an ACC schedule, but they don't contribute to the ACC. That's why I don't like them. I would like that Notre Dame just join a conference, whether it's the ACC, the Big Ten. I don't care who it is. Just join one already. And they will eventually have to join a conference. Or they won't have to. They don't have to do anything they don't want to do. But there will come a year. This won't be the year because they won't lose to Southern Cal. They'll go undefeated and make the playoff. So they'll be fine this year. But next year or the year after that or the year after that, there will be a time. Mark my words. Write it down. Tattoo it on your forehead if you have to. If you tattoo it on your forehead, make sure you tattoo it backwards so when you look in the mirror, it reads correctly. But this will happen. Notre Dame will be in the top 4 all year like they've been this year, and they will lose a game, and it will come down to them and one other team getting that 4th spot in the playoff, and Notre Dame will get left out of the playoff because they don't have a conference championship game, and it will take that before Notre Dame fans get on their, start screaming from mountaintop that we're ready to join a conference finally. But it's not going to happen until that happens. So we'll see when it happens. What's up, Jamie McCaslin? How you doing, sir? Yeah, Notre Dame. Don't even get me started. They get a lot of perks. They get a lot of things that teams that are in conferences don't get. And you could say that makes the argument for why should they join a conference. But my part of the argument is if they're so against joining a conference in football and they love their independence so much, then why have they joined the ACC in whole in basketball and baseball? Which they have. They are in the ACC in basketball and baseball. Not just in spirit. They are actually in the ACC. And the fact that the ACC lets them still stay outside of the ACC in football blows my mind. That's not on Notre Dame. That's on the ACC. That they let them do that. Because I don't think there's another conference that would let them do what they're doing other than the ACC. Notre Dame would be in the Big Ten, but Michigan's athletic director in the 1900s, Fielding Yaws, stopped it because they were racist towards Catholic. Listen, the reason that they're affiliated with the ACC is because the ACC has bent over and let Notre Dame stick it to them. The ACC is the only conference that lets Notre Dame stick them. That's why they do it. I agree. Notre Dame will lose in the first round of the playoffs. I think so too. And that's just not me saying that. I think that if you look at the projections in Vegas, they would be underdogs to everybody in the top 4 if they played in the first round of the playoffs. But of course, that doesn't mean anything. I think Notre Dame's a very good team. As much as I hate Notre Dame and their independence and their fan base, they sticking their chest out about how they're independent and they think they're better than everybody. None of that takes away from the fact that they have a really good football team. So I give them their credit where their credit's due. But that's where it ends. I think the first round of the playoffs is where it ends for them. All right, Arthur. Thanks for stopping in, sir. Yeah, I've said all I'm going to say about Notre Dame. My feelings on Notre Dame are very well documented, and they're not changing. And Notre Dame fans always say, "Why does everybody hate us so much?" Well, that's why. I just told you why. I mean, it's just that simple. And as a guy who's a fan of an ACC team, I'm even more on that level of why I dislike Notre Dame. Not as a fan base or as a football team, but just as an athletic program as a whole. Because of that, because of the way they screw the ACC over. They benefit a lot from being in the ACC or playing ACC teams, but we don't see the benefit back from them. Yes, I was at the Clemson Notre Dame game in the Hurricane, 2015, October 3rd. It was my birthday, my 35th birthday, and awesome game. Awesome game. Why do I think Alabama should be ranked number 1? I mean, why wouldn't they be? I mean, you have to give me a reason why they shouldn't be. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they look like the best team in the country for the vast majority of the year. Now, you can pick out a game here or there where they didn't look, where they weren't completely dominant. But out of all these teams in the top 4, they have dominated their opponents week in and week out more than any other team has. So that's why. But having said that, I think that Alabama could be beat by anybody in the top 4 on any given day. Alabama is beatable. They could lose to Clemson. They could lose to Notre Dame. They could lose to Michigan. I think out of all those teams, Clemson's probably the most likely to be able to knock them off. But that doesn't mean that they couldn't lose to any of those other teams. Hell, they could lose to Georgia in the SEC championship game. Now, if you're asking me to pick Alabama and Clemson, I'm sorry, Alabama and Georgia, I'm picking Alabama to beat Georgia. But if Georgia somehow beat Alabama, it wouldn't surprise me one bit. It's college football. College kids. Nick Saban is human. Tua Tagovailoa is not Aaron Rodgers or Drew Brees, even though they think he is. Yeah, that's how I feel. Anyway, so I'm going to have to get off now. Thanks, everybody, for stopping in. If you want to support the show, there's a link in the description of this video to my Patreon page. I want to give a special shout out to both Tiger Nation and Billy Dawson, my boys, being the first 2 to sign up for that. You can go on there and sign up for that. It takes you 5 minutes. You can read about the benefits of doing that. Anytime I do these live streams, there's a super chat option. You can donate through super chat. Of course, I don't expect anybody to do that, so I don't want to go down that road thinking that I'm asking people to do something they don't want to do. There will not be a live show Thursday because it's Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to every single one of you. Happy holidays, period. I hope everybody has a great day, a safe day on Thanksgiving. And a good couple of days off work. Hopefully most of you get days off work. But I will be back. Listen, I might be back on Friday for the Oklahoma and West Virginia game. If I can find a way to make that happen, I will do it. I'm going to try. I can't promise anything because I don't know what's going on around the household here as far as taking a few hours to do that. But if I can, I'll do it, and I'll post it on YouTube and on Twitter if I'm able to do it, so you know ahead of time. If not, then I will see you guys on Saturday for the Ohio State and Michigan game at noon, and I'll be on a few minutes before noon. So I'm really looking forward to that. Every single one of your teams that's playing this week against your rival, good luck to all of your teams. Unless you're a boom chicken, I'm not going to wish you luck. I hope we beat the ever-living hell out of you, and I think that we will. But the rest of you, good luck to all your teams. I hope all your teams win. I think that's it. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody, and thanks for stopping in. And I will see you sooner than later. Have a great night. Pigskin Pete checking out.